So, the Quebec government wants to table legislation to prevent domestic violence here in the province. The law, if it's passed, would allow people in relationships to find out if their partner has a history of domestic violence. It's called Clare's Law, and it would be based on Clare's Law, named after a woman in the UK who was killed by a partner who had a history of violence that Clare did not know about. Clare's Law already exists in the UK and several Canadian provinces. One of those provinces is Saskatchewan, which adopted the law in 2020. It was the first Canadian province to do so. Dr. Crystal Giesbrecht is the Director of Research at the Provincial Association of Transition Houses and Services of Saskatchewan, and she joins us on the line. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sue.
So why did Saskatchewan adopt Clare's Law?
Saskatchewan, like across Canada, has very high rates of intimate partner violence. And this was an option to do something proactive, to try to prevent incidents of intimate partner violence, and offers information that can help people to better plan for safety. So our government looked at the UK and found this working there and brought that best practice to Saskatchewan. And we're happy to see this being enacted in other provinces since, and many others considering it now.
So what does the law do exactly? What is different about the law than the way things work now?
Yeah, so under Clare's Law, there are two ways that someone can receive a disclosure of information. The first is right to ask, and that's when a member of the public makes a request at a local police service for information. The other is right to know, and that's where police officers can proactively inform someone of information pertaining to their risk. So an example to think of under right to know might be, especially in a small or rural community, sometimes police officers know people, they know the history, but they might intervene in an incident where someone has a new partner and that new partner is not aware of the potential risk they could be facing. If police have information relating to that person's past history of violence, they could proactively provide information to that individual in the situation. They could also recommend that they make a request under right to ask if that's what they want to do.
Okay, and so how does in practice, how does right to ask work?
Yeah, so someone will go into their local police station and make the request, say that they're interested in receiving information under Clare's Law. The police will ask some preliminary questions, get some information about the relationship, how do you know each other, verify ID and that kind of thing. And then they will do a records request, see what information is available. Then the police give redacted information, so nothing that would identify the individuals involved, names, birth dates, everything is removed. That file goes to the multi-sector review committee. I'm part of that, and that committee involves members from police, victim services, and also the Provincial Association of Transition Houses and Services of Saskatchewan, where I work. And we review that information and then make a recommendation to the police service regarding risk factors that we see that should be highlighted and make a recommendation of if a disclosure should happen. And then the police will follow up and inform the person and make a connection to victim services.
So I'm not sure I understand. So in basic basic understanding of it is that anyone, like let's say a neighbor or somebody who has a concern, would go to police and say, hey, I'm worried about this person, and then police would examine, and then it would go to the board and all of that?
Well, that's actually a great clarification, Sue. Thanks for that. Most ways that this happens is the individual who's at risk themselves would make the request. So, for example, someone is maybe dating a new partner. People are saying, my cousin went out with that person and they were violent, or, they're hearing things, or maybe they're seeing warning signs and risk factors themselves and having a concern, they might make the request. But someone else who's concerned could make a request. So sometimes it's a former partner who is aware, knows who the victim is, or potential, I should say, person at risk, knows who their partner is in a relationship with now. It could be a parent or guardian, a teacher, something like that. But important thing to note is that third party will never receive a disclosure of information. The information would always go to the person who's potentially at risk if they're willing and interested in receiving that information.
Right. Okay. So what kind of an impact has it had in Saskatchewan?
I think it is absolutely making a difference. Rather than having the previous option was police would intervene after an incident of violence happened, and that was sometimes the first connection to get someone connected to victim services, to shelters, to counseling agencies, and get more information. Now there's this tool in the toolbox to connect with people and provide them information, talk to them about risk, talk to them about safety planning, and put some of those things in place before it escalates to a situation of violence happening. So I think this is just really, I think it's making a difference. And from some of the files that we have reviewed, or many of the files, I should say, that we've reviewed as the multi-sector review committee, we have seen some really dangerous, really severe histories of violence. And there would be no way for someone who's dating that person to know that they're potentially at risk without Clare's Law being available.
But again, it's up to the person, I mean, the potential victim, right? The person in the relationship to make a decision about that. It's just information, right?
Right, absolutely. It's information. And there's no expectation if you receive a disclosure of information under Clare's Law. The expectation isn't that you end the relationship right now or that you take certain steps. It's information to help someone to make a better decision about what's going to work for them. So if someone does stay in the relationship, now maybe warning signs, things that are happening, things that are escalating, they might be more attuned to that and more likely to notice it, more likely to reach out for help or to have a safety plan in place. Or someone may choose to end that relationship and then they're connected with services that can support them when they do.
So if you were to give advice for Quebec thinking of tabling a similar law named after Gabi Renault, a woman who died from, again, someone who's a violent history, had a violent history, what would your advice to Quebec be?
I think Quebec should absolutely go ahead, table this legislation. I think it is so important to have this option available to be proactive and to prevent violence rather than just being able to respond after it happens. So I absolutely hope Quebec goes ahead. One specific piece of advice is I think it's very important, the way it happens in Saskatchewan, is that when police meet with that person who is potentially at risk, to provide a disclosure of information. Someone from victim services or another victim serving organization like the local domestic violence shelter is present for that. And they are available to do more safety planning, provide additional resources, and be an ongoing point of contact. So I think that's really important to make that connection and provide people who might be at risk with that connection to victim services so that there's a more in-depth risk assessment, safety planning, and get that support and information as well. So I would definitely include that connection as an important piece.
Absolutely. All right. Super interesting talking to you. Thanks so much for making the time.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye. That's Dr. Crystal Giesbrecht. She's the Director of Research at the Provincial Association of Transition Houses and Services of Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan adopted Clare's Law back in 2020. They were the first Canadian province to do so. Quebec is thinking of, the Quebec government has said it will table legislation similar to Clare's Law. It will be called, named after Gabi Renault, in the coming days.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.